So, yeah, this episode happened. The Hooffields and McColts is an episode that really highlights how far My Little Pony has come as a series, considering how out of place it feels next to the other Cutie Map episodes. This sort of everything happens until the middle of Act 3 structure which this episode took reminds us of the olden days of Seasons 1 and 2. Feeling Pinky Keen and Lesson 0 are perfect examples. However, out of place doesn't mean bad. I wouldn't call this episode bad by any stretch of the imagination. This episode dodged many bullets that the corresponding Avatar The Last Airbender episode ran headfirst into, but the problem with this episode is that it's in Season 5. Whenever this episode is going to be compared to another Cutie Map episode, it feels like Hooffields and McColts falls flat. But I will make the argument that it's not that episode's fault. Yes, Amending Fences is an amazing episode that pulled no punches and went straight for the feels without losing focus on what exactly it wanted to convey. But by that logic, a lot of other episodes in Season 5 fail to live up to those standards. I'd argue that Amending Fences was more of an anomaly than anything, but I'm going to save that for its actual review. Perhaps this says something about Hooffields and McColts, considering I can only think of other episodes whenever I try and talk about this one. This episode is a solid B, but perhaps that's why it's going to be forgotten unless it's watched again. There's nothing interesting in something that is above average. With both excellent and terrible episodes, you can wax poetic about what the episode did wrong or right and fill up as many minutes as you can. But with solid but insubstantial episodes like this one, there's not much to talk about other than lament that it wasn't another Amending Fences, which I feel is a boring discussion and completely misses the point of reviewing and analysis. Let's talk about the real problem with this episode. Fluttershy and Twilight Sparkle. These two characters feel like they are only in the episode because the other four choices would not be interesting. Rainbow Dash would join in on the fight, Rarity wouldn't, and now the episode goes into a different and volatile direction. I'd argue that Twilight and Fluttershy were the best choices for this type of idea, but like I said, the problem lies within how they were characterized within a Season 5 episode. Twilight still carries around a book and thinks that it could solve a friendship problem, despite nearly every test that Twilight has taken and every friendship problem in the series has been solved without any sort of referential material, because life and friendship problems can be extremely complicated. In past seasons, I would understand this because Twilight was gathering notes for tests as late as Season 4, but now it feels like the continuous amounts of times that Twilight has been told, "You can't learn only from books," leaks out of her head once the episode ends. And keep in mind that this lesson was basically taught at the end of the pilot. Fluttershy, on the other hand, has the capability to use her kindness in a way that shows that she learned how to deal with egotistical and immature rage and arguments. Discord was an egotistical and evil villain that Fluttershy practically reformed, both by being a friend and using guilt. While in that same episode, the other five were being the opposite, in that they were the heroes, but they judged Discord without giving him a chance, and strong-armed him out of their friendship circle. But as we see with What About Discord, that is slowly starting to subside. Instead of any sort of thematic reference or callback to Fluttershy's previous problems, we had to wait for both the animals and her to solve the problem for us. Fluttershy didn't learn anything. She took notice of the animals' increasing anxiety over the crumbling hill, but was busy shepherding the animals out of the fight until the last act. It's understandable, but the structure of an episode can always be called into question if the answer to, could this have been solved in Act 1, is yes. However, I understand why this happened. Fluttershy has always had issues with solving a friendship problem ever since she took her aggression too far in putting her hoof down. She's shy, it's in her name, and because of this, she is hesitant to force herself into Pony's problems, since she can stay on the sidelines and hope everything blows over. Twilight could get distracted with trying to use this feud as fuel for her royal duties and trademark friendship book, and that's why she missed the point of the problem. The episode took an extra 2 acts because Fluttershy is shy, and as such, she's in character. Fee and I mentioned this during our recent podcast on the episode. I'll put a link in the description. This episode is structured well. The dialogue, good. The pacing, good. Was it fun? Sure, but Hooffields and McColts builds up to a resolution that leaves us wanting more, and not in a good way. We want some sort of mystery being solved before our very eyes, or a friendship problem being more dense than we thought it would, but that's not what we got. That's what I mean when I say that this episode belongs in Season 1 or 2. It simply feels outdated when compared to the rest of the Cutie Map episodes, since this mountain could be taking place right next to Ponyville with the lack of impact that it made. Along with that, the problem is insubstantial, but not lacking. Like Takeout Food or a Tom Petty song, the waiting was the hardest part. I'd say this episode is indicative of how the show has changed in scope, but mostly stayed the same in execution with each passing week. There's a bigger topic on the horizon over how My Little Pony should be written, considering after 5 seasons we are still having a little bit of each type of episode. An episode like Hooffields and McColts certainly isn't hurting the show in any way, but merely remaining itself, while I feel we as fans hold it higher than it should be because of anomalies like Amending Fences. I honestly wouldn't change anything about this week's episode, and I can't see anything that would improve it, since stripping away Twilight's and Fluttershy's character problems would simply make this episode, and arguably the show, harder to write than it needs to be. Twilight would turn into a perfect Mary Sue character, while Fluttershy would lose the part of her personality that makes her struggle with accepting the fact that she is part of a group that is meant to solve friendship problems, no matter how many hooves she has to step on to make it happen. This intricacy within her character is a deep part of who she is, and I'd be very sad if we lost that. Overall, I'm not disappointed in this episode, despite it feeling like it was missing the thematic connection to Fluttershy's element that could have catapulted itself to the top of the Fluttershy episodes. It was enjoyable, an excellent children's retelling of the Hatfield and McCoy feud that DHX brought to life. Nothing fell apart, and the only problems that it had were due to something that you can't really fix in one episode, but definitely needs to be addressed in the next season. If My Little Pony wants to push this idea that they are going to be more structured, both with its characters and themes, with an overarching narrative while still being written for little girls, and it's arguable if the show even wants to go in that direction, then problems like Twilight and Fluttershy's conveyance in this episode are going to have to stop being lost in translation when the writers get their prompts. I'd have no problem watching this episode again, but I feel like I'm going to forget it once we get into the next season. I definitely put it at the high point of the season, even if the premiere and Amending Fences knocks this episode down from the top. But what do you guys think? Were Twilight and Fluttershy written well in this episode? Was I simply looking for more within an episode that perfectly stands on its own? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more reviews and the Equestria Daily podcast. ABagOVicodin out.